Hi everyone, Michael Murray from Distributors here again. It's been a while since we've done our last video, so we thought it was a good time to do another one, especially given the government has moved us on to the next stage of their four-stage process to come out of lockdown, and as this means a lot of businesses are reopening and going back to work, schools going back, etc. We thought it'd be a really good time to give you some top tips on what to do to get your premises ready and to get your staff ready, etc., for going back to work. So here we go, straight in with tip number one, which is fairly simple to follow, fairly elementary, but of course be aware of and make sure you are implementing all of the legislative enforcement and guidance that the government have put forward for this next stage. If you're not sure what they are, these are available on the government websites, which should be appearing above me now, but I will read them out just for the record. They are www.gov.uk/coronavirus and also www.hse.gov.uk/news/coronavirus. Okay, that's step number one. Step number two is make sure your premises and site, etc., are set up properly for safe distancing. So you want to bear in mind things like having corridors for access, so people can get in and out of the building okay and clear and staying 2 meters away from people. Obviously, workspaces need to be sufficiently spaced out so people remain appropriately distanced. You want to have a think about adequate arrangements for accessing bathrooms and kitchen spaces and things like that. You also want to have a think about practical things like touching of doors, windows, work surfaces, cupboards, or shared materials and shared resources, etc. How are you going to handle those? How are you going to keep those clean and safe? Are doors going to be left open, etc.? And if you do have situations with doors, lifts and things like that, then you also want to think about the other consequences. For instance, if leaving a door open could be contrary to fire regulations, etc. You could be solving one health and safety issue and creating another. So watch out for that. Next one, again, fairly obvious, but just to reinforce the point, make sure you inform your staff of the measures you're taking and train them appropriately as to what steps they need to be taking to comply. And then once you're up and running, make sure you're monitoring their behaviour and monitoring their practices. It's really, really important that we all actually do comply with these regulations and do take the steps we need to make sure. Otherwise, it's just not going to work, and we're going to have a second spike with the coronavirus, and it could be even worse. So it's really important that people are aware of what they need to do and are putting that into practice. Alright, so the next point I wanted to make is if you have a return to work policy already in your company, a lot of companies will have these already for staff who've been away or sick or maternity leave, etc. Have a look at that, inspect that and see if that's still appropriate in the circumstances. Do you need to make any special adaptations to that? Do you need to put out a special one-time coronavirus return to work policy, etc.? That could be quite useful, something to think about. Next thing to do, again, really important, obviously before you reopen your premises, your site, your shop, etc., or your office, is to make sure that it is properly inspected and deep cleaned, especially things like utility areas, equipment, stock, etc. And these need to be regularly cleaned throughout as well. Communal areas you want to watch out for as well. Fridges, sinks, printers, cupboards, drawers, areas like that we need to have a look at in particular. And it may also be necessary to perhaps quarantine certain items that are being used. Put them away somewhere safe where they can't be accessed again for a set period, so that any contamination on those items has a chance to die off before someone else to touch it. I know this is something a lot of shops are putting in place with things that people need to try or test. So it's something you might want to think about as well. And obviously, the other thing you need to look out for is if your site has been closed or your office has been closed for some time, you know, as always with closed spaces, check for anything that's happened in the meantime. Has there been any damage caused? Is there anything that needs repairing, or any unsafe issues that need sorting out? Not just coronavirus related issues as well. I mean, we're fortunate time of year, we're not dealing with things like frost, which could have caused burst pipes and things, but still it's worth having an investigation to make sure nothing's gone on while everyone's been out of the premises, and making sure that's sorted out before people come back in. Next point, and it's related to what I was just talking about, is obviously making sure to check that all testing and safety procedures, etc., insurance policies, etc., are all up to date and remain in place. The last thing you want to do is have people go back and find out your liability insurance is run out, or that people are using electronic equipment where PAT tests have failed or passed, etc. Obviously the issue there being the health and safety executive. They can be, if they're called in to investigate anything, they will quite often keep digging till they find something. They are self-funding now, so every time they carry out an investigation, they are motivated to find something to level a fine for, to recover the cost of their investigation. So it's really worth your time making sure all that stuff remains in place. That's again making sure that testing dates are up to date, safety procedures are up to date, insurance policies are up to date, etc. Next one to think about is to make sure your services and emergency equipment and things like that, monitoring equipment, that's all okay. You don't want batteries to have died in smoke alarms and things like that while everyone's been out of the building over the last 2 months. So check the obvious things there. But also you want to be looking at, is your air conditioning working? What's the internet looking like at the moment? Gas and water, are they still okay? Were they shut? Was a pipe turned off, for safety or economy before everyone left the building? Look out for things like that. Air conditioning, obviously, you want to watch out, things like Legionnaires and things like that could be an issue there. Same with water coolers and things like that. They might need looking at, cleaning, updating, etc. But also fire safety and fire suppression stuff. Is that equipment still in date and up to date and in safe working order? And of course, if you are operating a reduced staff basis, then you want to have a look at things like existing assessments and risk procedures. So for example, classic one being fire procedures. You'll probably have fire marshals within your business whose job it is to undertake certain jobs if there is ever a fire alarm that goes off. But if you're running reduced staff, it might be that your fire marshals aren't actually in the building. So you need to appoint a temporary fire marshal. Same with first aid, things like that. Do you have a first aider on site, or are they someone who's not coming into the office at the moment? So make sure you have adequacies covered there. Also, with risk assessments and things, are these going to be impacted or impinged by the arrangements you're having to make for coronavirus? Is it a case, for example, you have a fire evacuation strategy, but because you're operating certain procedures for coronavirus risk management, for example, you might have all the doors except one closed, so there's only one door which is left open. Is that going to have an impact on your fire safety regulations or your fire safety planning? So have a think about those. That's all we've really got on our list for now, but there's a plethora of information out there, as I'm sure you're aware, and there's loads more things to think about. So if there's anything we can do to help, or if you're interested in any of our other videos, support packages, etc., please do get in touch. The easiest way to do that is to email me, Michael Murray, at michaelmurray@disputeassist.co.uk. Many thanks.